I'm just going to move on. I'm going to deliver the next talk. I'm Headmaster of Canford. I've been here since 2013. It's the fourth school I've worked in. I think, as Johnny said earlier, the really important thing here is that you're not going to affect this change overnight. Obviously, the sooner we get going, the better. But obviously, as with everything in life, it's about making a start. It's about creating those opportunities, I think, giving a bit of momentum, and then obviously sort of building that up through the, even if we're in the confines of our current system. I think for me, it's been really fascinating watching the thousands of young people I've worked with since 1994 find their way. Most of those, I think, have been really filled with potential. They've had, in many cases, relatively little idea, I think, of how to focus or harness that. And I'm not talking here about building academic knowledge or the ability to tackle exams. I'm not talking about doing interview practice or giving a presentation or just about getting involved in lots of different activities. What I am talking about is ensuring that they can reflect on not just what they're doing, but how and why they're doing it. And in that way, they can then direct their qualities, their energy more effectively and successfully. They can be more honest with themselves and others, and they can make better decisions. A conversation I have pretty frequently with pupils is I'll be sort of wandering up to the AstroTurf or over to the music school or whatever it is, and I'll ask the pupil, what are you doing now? And they said, I'm off to do sports, sir. Okay, so what sport? Well, I'm doing hockey. Okay, great, that's brilliant. So what are you going to learn from that experience? And it's interesting how gradually it comes out, well, I need to be there. Actually, you're 5 minutes late, so you better get a move on. Time management. When you get there, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to be there as part of an ensemble. So you're a lead violinist or whoever, if you're not there, then the whole thing's going to fall apart. That sense of teamwork, when everybody gets down, you're going to pick each other up. So that kind of conversation is a really interesting one to have with those pupils as they're finding their way sort of to a different activity. They'll see it as sport, hockey, music, orchestra, but actually how you then delve through that is really interesting. And they gradually get it, or they can then articulate it. So, I mean, it's a case of, should we simply learn organically, or let them learn rather organically from experience by sort of trial and error, or should we be actually helping them to reflect and analyze and thus be better able perhaps to lead themselves now and in the future, both professionally and personally? For me personally, I was really lucky. Growing up, I knew what I wanted to do. I was going to go into the army. Then I knackered my knees playing rugby. I thought, well, okay, fine, I'll go and do law because lots of other people are doing that and it's a nice clear pathway. That didn't work out. I was all a bit rudderless. I then drifted into working in the city for a few years. And I knew in my heart of hearts that I wasn't really on the right track. I wasn't on the right path. And I was really lucky because I met a guy called Jeff who he was a friend of my parents, so I was lucky there too. And he really sat down with me for sort of a couple of sessions just to help me understand what made me fizz, but also what made me fizzle out. And it wasn't about telling me what I should do or what path I ought to follow. It was more about helping me to understand what sort of tools I had in my bag, really, and thus have a much better idea of how and where I might look to use those more effectively. And I went into teaching, and it's been brilliant. And I've done lots of different things in lots of different schools, and I've been so lucky because I do think I'm in the right job. Prior to here, I worked at Christ Hospital. If you don't know anything about that school, then look it up. It is an extraordinary place. And the vast majority of children there are supported on bursaries. Many of them come with raw intellect, but for many of them, they have very little in their lives to provide support, structure, aspiration, or ambition. And they come to Christ Hospital and they are exposed to some really wonderful opportunities. And gradually, the penny drops for them as to how those things make a difference. Being in the marching band, how that can make a difference to them and how they manage their lives, the options open for them, and those lives which often are very chaotic and often troubled. But that could have been even more powerful if they'd had an enhanced ability to reflect and to direct their own trajectory. So when I came here to Canford, I had firmer hands on the levers of power, I suppose. And I was lucky one day I was chatting to a parent on the edge of a netball court, and she mentioned this sort of contact of Ivy House and whatever that was about. So I thought I'd follow that through and see what happened. And I sort of was very fortunate in the sense that I worked through with Elka and with Ivy House from the early days to look and see how that award should evolve and take shape and develop. And yeah, it's been really wonderful seeing that in operation. Last year, we got involved with Ivy House. It was the first year there. It was the pilot year. I was really keen that we did that because I thought the insight and the skills that the award offered were going to be a fundamental part of what we needed to provide for our young people's development and for their well-being. So we took the decision here that all our year 12 pupils would be enrolled. We identified some core funding and ring-fenced that. We explored the very congested timetable and found some timetabled space for the program. We then looked for volunteers. We didn't sort of put it on people's timetables. We looked for volunteers of people who were interested in this concept. And we did, although obviously some of those are teachers, we've also got the financial director, we've got the HR director, we've got our theatre manager, who I know is on today, and we had some teachers, but it was very much, they were facilitators, not teachers. And we made that very clear that that's what they were going to be called. Two of those have been on the Ivy House programme that Elka outlined and were great because they were helped to evangelise. And we were also clear to the pupils that this was not going to be a lesson. So through that first year, we had some good success there, I think. The good news is all those facilitators wanted to stay involved. That was a good sign. And they've learned a great deal themselves from being involved in that programme, I think. And some of them have openly admitted to me that they learned a lot from being involved in the programme, and they've applied that to their own lives. And the end of year wash-up that we had was really, really insightful and reflective. And I just want to share with you here, I mean, the pupil feedback that we sought, interestingly, the numerical rating scores were varied. I think teenagers are pretty tough markers. But it was the comments they gave that really, for me, delivered that insight into the reflection and the impact that award had in the first year. And I'll just give you a few of those quotations. So it says, I use the learning outcomes to shape my daily life by thinking a lot more before acting out and by really listening to others. I now seek feedback and respond. I used to avoid it and react. Other ones, at home, I've definitely applied the event plus behavior equals result to try and have a better relationship with my parents, especially when I'm tired. Another one, even though I now know what puts me in my element, I regularly reflect on that because that can change and I need to be aware. Another one, I now go into important conversations with a clear idea of the message I want to get across and do not let my emotions take over. And I particularly like this one. When I'm in a bad mood at school, I just think to myself that being in a bad mood, for one, isn't a nice thing to do to oneself, but also about how my mood is affecting others. It's energy draining. And last one here, remembering I have a choice about how I react to things now lies at the heart of my thinking. And there were a whole host of other quotations there, as I say, which came out of the survey that we did. And I think that really, really gets across the power of some of that thinking that came through the being involved with the programme in year one. And, you know, I think that ability to reflect, review, to respond in an honest way to ourselves and to others in relation to the pressures of life has got to be important to the development and to the well-being of those young people that we work with and that we care for and that we care about. But certainly, you know, we're looking at how we build that profile and the application of the Ivy House Award into what we do here, into the language that we use, whether that be in activities in houses where lower years are led by some of those who've been through or are doing the award. We use it in terms of how our pupils apply for pupil leadership roles. And we use it or we'll certainly be using it, we're due to do it last year, but in our career symposium where the Ivy House students are, they have to develop their pitch that they're going to put across to the 80 plus OCs and parents who come in to help them with that. But it's trying to get a sense of that thinking and that engagement and the language that's being used and what sits behind that so that they can reflect, they can review, and that they can respond in a way which is, as I say, it's honest, but they're able to articulate that thinking and to express it honestly and openly. And just to finish from me, it was really fascinating in lockdown where my middle son, who went through that program, we like everybody else, had some pretty interesting dinner table conversations during that period, some of them quite heated. And my middle son was talking with my older son, who's just gone back to university for his third year. Older son, no idea what he wants to do, where he wants to go. And the middle son was sitting there saying, well, actually, what you need to think about is these sorts of things. And he then worked through some of the stuff he'd learned from that program, trying to enlighten his older brother on how to be more reflective, how to think through and review, not what he wants to do, but why he wants to do it and how he's going to do it and where he's going to go and what's important to him. So, that was a really interesting experience for me. I better stop there because I think I've overrun a little bit. And I hope that's helpful. If you want to get in touch with me about the Ivy House program, then please do. I'd be very happy to talk to you about it and put you in touch with some of those here who are delivering it.